Spiritual Reflections, the reincarnation of Judas as Joan of Arc, a spiritist message for you, the mystery of Judas and the destiny of Joan of Arc. Have you ever stopped to consider how humanity's greatest mistakes can be corrected over time and through multiple incarnations? What if we told you that one of the greatest traitors in Christian history, Judas Iscariot, had a chance for redemption that goes far beyond what we traditionally understand? Imagine that this same spirit, after committing one of history's greatest failures, would reincarnate again with a mission of salvation and spiritual transformation, no longer as a traitor, but as the French national hero, Joan of Arc. In the spiritual world, possibilities are infinite, and the evolution of the spirit is a continuous and transformative process. Judas, a complex figure, betrayed Christ, but in his final incarnation as Joan of Arc, he had the opportunity to correct his mistake and fulfill a divine mission much greater than any traitor could have imagined. Joan of Arc, a young peasant girl, became a symbol of courage and faith, guided by spiritual voices, defying fate and changing the course of history. How could the spirit of Judas possibly reincarnate with such a mission of redemption and liberation? In this video, we're going to investigate this fascinating spiritual connection between Judas and Joan of Arc, reflect on the true nature of Christ's mission, and see how reincarnation can be a journey of redemption and spiritual evolution. Get ready to dive into a story that will change your perception of forgiveness, redemption, and the spiritual cycles that lead us to an understanding of life after death. The complex legacy of Judas Iscariot, betrayal or the fulfillment of a divine destiny. The figure of Judas Iscariot has been one of the most controversial and misunderstood symbols in human history. Judas, the apostle who betrayed Jesus, is often seen as the greatest traitor in history. His action of handing Jesus over to the Roman authorities for crucifixion is regarded by many as an act of pure evil and greed. However, we must go beyond the traditional view, which often reduces the spirit of Judas to a caricature of a villain. According to Spiritism, spirits do not act in an isolated or deterministic way. On the contrary, they are moved by divine spiritual plans that aim for the evolution of humanity. Therefore, Judas's betrayal was not a simple act of greed, but part of a greater plan that is revealed only over millennia of reincarnations and spiritual learning. The theory that Judas acted as part of a divine mission has been defended by many spiritist scholars and mediums, including the renowned medium Chico Xavier, who presents a more complex view of the figure of Judas. Christ, as a spirit of high stature, certainly understood that his mission would not be completed without Judas's act, because Christ's crucifixion was the foundation for the redemption of all humanity. In this context, Judas did not act out of mere betrayal, but as a spirit who, despite his mistakes, fulfilled his role within a divine plan of spiritual evolution and human liberation. Joan of Arc, the final reincarnation of Judas Iscariot and the mission of redemption. Now let's talk about Joan of Arc, the French national hero who, in her youth, became a symbol of faith, courage, and leadership. Joan, born in 1412 in the Lorraine region of France, was an illiterate but deeply religious peasant girl. From childhood, she had a profound connection to spirituality and began to receive visions and voices at age 12, which she believed came from Saint Michael the Archangel, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret. These voices guided her to fight for the liberation of France, which was under English rule during the 100 Years' War. Joan of Arc was a mystical young woman and a spiritual leader, and on her mission, she guided the French army to several decisive victories, changing the course of the war and the history of France. But what you may not know is that, according to the Spiritist doctrine, the spirit of Judas Iscariot was reincarnated as Joan of Arc, fulfilling a mission of spiritual redemption and purification that led him to a new opportunity to atone for his past mistakes. During this reincarnation, Joan of Arc not only led the French army, but was also guided by highly evolved spirits, who helped her fulfill her role in the divine plan. Her work was not just military, but deeply spiritual, with the mission of preparing France to receive the promised comforter, the Spiritist doctrine that would later be codified by Allan Kardec in the 19th century. The reincarnation of Judas as Joan of Arc is a clear example of how a spirit can, over multiple lifetimes, purify itself and fulfill its role of redemption, regardless of its past history. This transition from Judas to Joan of Arc demonstrates that spiritual evolution has no end, and even the greatest spiritual mistakes can be corrected over time, with personal effort and with the adjustment of one's life path. The spiritual mission of Joan of Arc, the struggle and spiritual transformation. Joan of Arc was not just a military leader, but a profoundly spiritual and mediumistic woman. What made her so extraordinary was not just her strategic ability, but also her connection to the spiritual world. The voices she heard were, according to spiritual accounts, highly evolved spirits, and her mission went beyond winning battles. Her goal was to spiritually purify and elevate France, a country that, at the time, was on the brink of collapse due to the armed conflicts. Joan of Arc's journey is an example of how mediumship can be used for the greater good of humanity. By receiving spiritual guidance to save the country, she was also, in a way, fulfilling a divine plan to prepare the world for the arrival of the promised comforter. When Joan of Arc took command of the French troops, she not only influenced the course of the war, but also brought a new spiritual perspective to the French people. Her inspiring leadership and unwavering faith served as an example of courage and determination, and her spiritual impact was profound and lasting. Her mission was crucial for building a new spiritual path for France, aligning it with the divine plan of spiritual evolution. The imprisonment, trial, and death of Joan of Arc, unwavering faith. After her military victories, Joan of Arc was captured by the Burgundians, who were allies of the English, and taken to a religious tribunal where she was accused of heresy and witchcraft. During the process, Joan was subjected to physical and psychological torture, but never lost faith in her mission. She always maintained that she was being guided by spiritual voices, which was interpreted by the inquisitors as heresy. However, Joan of Arc remained firm in her spiritual conviction and never strayed from her faith even in the face of death. At age 19, she was burned alive at the stake, becoming a martyr and a symbol of Christian faith. Her death was tragic, but like every great spiritual mission, it marked a point of transition and opened the way for spiritual advancement. Years later, Joan of Arc was exonerated in a new trial and canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church in 1920. Her life and death continued to inspire millions, showing the power of faith and spiritual redemption. Judas, Joan of Arc, and the journey of spiritual redemption. The story of Judas Iscariot and his reincarnation as Joan of Arc offers a powerful example of spiritual redemption. Judas, the greatest traitor, had the opportunity to correct his mistakes over several incarnations, and in his final reincarnation, he fulfilled a mission of liberation and spiritual transformation, not only for himself, but for humanity. Joan of Arc was a hero who used her mediumship and spiritual leadership to fulfill a divine mission, preparing the world for the arrival of the promised comforter. Through this example, we learn that true spiritual redemption goes beyond our past mistakes and invites us to overcome life's challenges, always with the guidance of the spiritual world. If you felt touched by this story of redemption and want to understand how to overcome your spiritual mistakes, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with your friends. Together, we will continue spreading the Spiritist doctrine and divine love, helping more people understand the true spiritual mission we have in our lives. Leave your comment below and share your opinion. What do you think about the reincarnation of Judas Iscariot as Joan of Arc? What is your view on spiritual redemption? Let's talk about it.